big takeaway for me was Liverpool's insipid performance against PSV. I don't think they can get away with it without talking about it because it was just so seismic. I think what you have to understand is that this run is so bad. This run that they're on is so bad that it pales into insignificance anything else that has happened, even in like the periods where Brendan Rodgers was struggling towards the end, or when Klopp had that little wobble, or go back even further, the end of the Benitez reign, the Hodgson reign. We're talking. This is an unprecedented in living memory run of results for Liverpool. 72 years since they were this bad. 9 defeats in 12 games, and 3 straight defeats by 3 goals. That cannot happen. They were so loose in terms of giving the ball away, but also not quick enough to get back, not strong enough in the tackle, not enough desire, not aggression, all the things that, like, literally, when you're going through a bad run, Scott, you know what it's like, right? The first thing that the manager does once you get to, I don't know, 3 or 4, you go, right, that's it now. We go back to basics. We sharpen up. We get compact, we close the spaces, we make sure we win our duels, our tackles, everything. We don't concede goals. You certainly don't concede 4 against PSV.
No, and I remember Alan Kirbishley telling me a story that when he was manager, and I think Mick McCarthy was going through a bad run, and Sir Bobby Robson said to him, they were at Lillishall for a managers convention, and he said to Curbs, what would you do on this type of run? Before Curbs could even answer, he said, I'd play 11 defenders. And his point is, you make yourself difficult to beat. You literally go back to basics. It's not old school to say, you just make yourself very compact, very well organized. If you have to kick it into row Z, you kick it into row Z, and you make sure that you're not open in any way whatsoever, either in transition and especially in set pieces as well. And I think that's something that Liverpool have completely lost. And I watched Arne Slot's post-match presser, and the reporter had to repeat a question because he didn't quite get it. You could see that his eyes were almost glazing over. He was almost just in a real daze, in a real mist of what on earth is happening here and how do I turn it around? And in the pod on Monday, we were saying, I think you sort of asked the question, what do you do if you're meeting up with Richard Hughes, and what would you say? He needs to know that he knows what the problem is, or at least he's willing to get there step by step. It just seemed to me as if it's just unraveling and coming away from him at the moment, and that's very worrying indeed.
Well, he's not coming up with the solutions, and that's the issue. This is not a run that has just started. This has been going on for some time now. There has been an international break in the middle of this as well, so he's had time to get his thoughts together. Now, look, there are mitigating circumstances with Liverpool, and we always caveat our conversations with that because none of us can quite really understand the impact of the loss of a teammate in the dressing room. That has to be factored into any decisions that are being made and has to be factored into any discussions that we have. But at the same time, you can't keep losing football matches. You
No.
can't keep dropping down the table. You can't keep dropping further down the Champions League table. Now, look, their Champions League performances have been okay. The results have been okay. They did very well against Real Madrid. They were excellent that night. And actually, when they beat Villa and then Real Madrid, you expected them to kick on from there, but they've regressed again. Since then, they've lost away at Manchester City when they weren't very good at all. Go back to that game. Think about the goal where where Manchester City build up on the left-hand side by their own corner flag and end up scoring at the other end. How on earth does a team that have just won the title allow a team, I know as good as Manchester City can be, to get all that way through the whole of the pitch, playing the ball to every single player without intervention? That cannot happen. That cannot happen. It certainly can't happen on a regular, and that is what is happening to Liverpool. And he's got to get it. He's got to get it sorted out because awkward games, West Ham and Sunderland in the next couple of weeks. I don't know. Do you give them a free pass because of the title, because of the circumstances, because of the influx of new players? Or what do you do here? Because it's very, very difficult, isn't it? This is a real test for the hierarchy as well as for Arne Slot.
No, it is. And, I don't think Liverpool have ever sacked a manager that has won them the top flight title. It's always been a couple of years down the line where they've kind of resigned or whatever. I wouldn't say as yet there's a question about, sacking him. What I would say is like, can you find a solution? Now, I do feel sorry for him in a way because I think more now than ever, players seem to get away with it. ultimately, it's always down to the players, Sam. The managers are more important than they've ever been in terms of tactics, in terms of how they want their players to play, and also the sort of almost propaganda in the way they need to come across to the media and social media. But it always has been and always will be about the players. And if the players are not performing or making silly mistakes, you go through those goals where you were at Anfield last night. These are players where you can say, "What are you doing there? Why are you putting your hand up? Why aren't you just getting rid of the ball? Why aren't you tucking round a little bit more and reading the situation? Why are you letting someone just go past you on the halfway line?" So it's that mentality. So what Arne Slot has to do is control the controllables. He has to now pick his leaders, and also two, the ones that will work the hardest. They may not be the most talented, but they're the ones that he needs to get them out of the doo-doo that they're in right now.
I don't want to call out individual players, but Virgil van Dijk stood up after the game against Nottingham Forest. He stood up a couple of times this season and he has given his opinion. He's come out quite stridently, almost called out some of his teammates and said, we've got to be better at this, we've got to be better at that. I mean, I cannot explain to you what on earth he was doing after 4 minutes of that game, where he felt it appropriate to put his right arm in the air and touch that corner. I just don't get it. I mean, yes, he was being sort of manhandled a little bit, but not that much. It's a clear as day penalty. There's absolutely no excuses for it. And when your captain is making decisions like that, you're in a serious, serious problem.
Yeah. And we talk about leaders in this situation. Again, why I feel Chelsea won't go on to win the Premier League this season, but they're not a million miles away. You need those leaders in the big moments to step up. And especially with the stat that I mentioned on Monday, they go behind, what was it? It'd be 9 out of 12 now. And yet they
Yes, 9 out of 12
still
times they've gone behind, yeah.
still on, and they've lost every one of those games. So the moments so early in a game as well are so crucial. You're the leader, you're the captain. You just don't make those split second crazy decisions to put yourself and your team and then the fans emitting their disappointment with what they're seeing and nervousness onto everybody. So absolutely he has to, hold his hand up, and he's one of them for sure. But there are many Liverpool players who you talk about. The new players, they're not playing particularly well. Obviously, they've got certain injuries. Well, what happened with the tragedy of Diogo Jota? But it's actually the players that were there last season that are not performing anywhere near that they were, and that's what Liverpool need them to be.
Yeah, you want them to hold their hands up, just not in the penalty area as a cross is coming in after 4 minutes. November 1953 to January 1954, the last time that Liverpool were this bad over the course of a dozen games in all competitions. Do you want to know what happened at the end of that season, Scott?
Go on, you'll tell me.
It's
They
not going
didn't
to
get.
happen.
They didn't. They
It's
got
not going to
relegated.
happen, but they got relegated.
Yeah, it's not going to happen.
It cannot happen. It cannot happen. But that's how bad the run is. I think it just underscores how bad the run is. And look, I think if you said to me at the beginning of the week, would they sack him? Would they make a change? I would have said absolutely not. He's got enough credit in the bank. There are mitigating circumstances. And he is a very calm and very good orator. And I'd say I believed in him. However, the performance was that bad, I thought, on Wednesday night that I think if it doesn't sharpen up over the next couple of games and he doesn't convince everybody that he's got a plan to turn it around, he could well find himself in a little bit of trouble.